Well, what's up, everybody? It is the postseason now, and the fantasy season is kind of over, but the 2024 season starts right now. All right, we're going to give you our top 24 for next year. We're going to obviously take a brief look at the NFL playoff matchups, and really expecting a very fun weekend here. And we're going to say hello to Dave and Jamie. A pretty fun game last night, Jamie Eisenberg. I gave a hot take. I was watching with some friends who I do have. And I gave a hot take. Tua, if you put Tua Tagovailoa on the Giants, he's basically Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Maybe. I was surprised, and I'll give you a chance before I send it in, that you have Tua ranked over Dak Prescott, I believe.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So do you have Daniel Jones ranked out of Dak Prescott as well?
I mean, look, he's still good for fantasy as long as Hill and Waddle are healthy. You know, he's still going to put up big numbers. Dak has like one guy. I think that was why I went with. I basically had Tua, Purdy, and Dak in a three-way tie, if I recall, and I think I have them 11, 12, 13.
You were the only person of the 5 people who ranked quarterbacks for the exercise that we're doing to not have Dak in the top 12.
He's 13. Where did you guys have him?
I had Tua 13th. Oh, you're saying Dak wasn't in the top?
Yeah, Dak's 13th.
Yes. Dak is 5 for me.
I'm in off-season listening mode. I've got Dak at 8, but there's obviously a chance that he could rise. There's a lot that could change in Dallas this offseason, though.
Apparently. Yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend. They are the NFC champions, though. NFC East champions, sorry. I got ahead of myself. They're the NFC East champions.
Little preview. What do you think is going to happen?
I was hanging out with a Packers fan last night, and he is ready. He's like, we got this. We love beating the Dallas Cowboys. Like, I mean, they're confident. So
there's a few upset spots for this upcoming weekend.
I think there's only 2 that you look at and you go, "There's no way there's going to be an upset."
There's only one.
Kansas City and Buffalo.
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
No, I don't agree on Kansas City.
Okay.
I mean, Dolphins.
You know what? Kansas City deserves that. They haven't played well enough to say that they're definitely going to beat Miami.
100%. But the Dolphins are so beat up right now. They are so injured.
They are. On defense, people, you might obviously know about the offensive injuries, but the defensive injuries are really taking a toll on them.
They lost 5 pass rushers in the last, I think, month.
Yeah, and they have to go to a cold weather. But I can't. It's going to be tough. But I don't think the Chiefs have just been so uninspiring for. I can't wait. I'm really pumped. It's a good wild card weekend. I think
it's great.
Very good.
Cleveland at Houston. That's a
except
good
that stupid game's on Peacock.
Miami, Kansas City.
We like streaming. Streaming's good.
We like streaming for us, not streaming for other people.
Exactly. How about Cleveland and Houston in the playoffs facing each other, and Deshaun Watson is not the quarterback for either team?
That's a
fun storyline.
I tweeted out the reunions last night, and somebody brought that up. Watson versus the Browns. Watson's not playing. I mean, Watson versus Texans. Watson not playing the Texans.
So the Lions-Rams is the first matchup in postseason history between 2 quarterbacks, both facing their former teams. And I think the last time, I'm reading from our CBS research team. It's first time a quarterback faces his former team in the playoffs since, anyone know?
Is it Peyton Manning?
Yeah, Peyton Manning against the Colts in 2014, and he lost that game. All right. Anyway, plenty more on that later in the week. All right, let's tell everybody to vote, huh? Vote for us in the Sports Podcast Awards. You can look at the QR code. You can click the link in the episode description wherever you're watching or listening, or you can go to sportspodcastawards.com, click vote now, and then find the best fantasy betting and gaming podcast category and select fantasy football today. Your vote will decide. It is all fan voting at this point. So prove to us that we have a lot of fans and help us win this award. Sportspodcastawards.com, best fantasy betting and gaming podcast. Today on the show, news and notes. We'll give you the coaching updates. We're going to take a look at Week 18. Week 18 deserves some love. We'll talk about guys like Jordan Love. Actually, no, he was not one of the top 5, but he'll be talked about at some point because we're doing superlatives. Derek Carr. Derek Carr is the number 1 quarterback in Week 18. He finished strong. James Conner, Nico Collins, Dalton Kincaid. We won't just skip over it. It is important stuff. We have our superlatives, MVP, biggest bust, best waiver wire pickup, which also might be the MVP, and the comeback player of the year. And also we'll unveil our top 24s for the 2024 season. All right. Arthur Smith fired. Dave, your reaction?
Expected, totally reasonable. Looking forward to the Falcons hiring a head coach that will use his best talent, but more importantly, agree to find a quarterback that can actually help lead the team to some victories and not cost the team with terrible inaccuracy, untimely turnovers, and being so bad that Taylor Heineke has to come in and take over.
Good for Bijan.
It's good for everyone everywhere.
Well, I mean, let's see who they hire, but yes, it should be good for everyone everywhere. And the quarterback is obviously going to matter, a big part of this, so I would hope that they bring in someone to maximize the talent of what they've, accrued over the last 3 seasons, with bringing in arguably the best tight end, wide receiver, and running back in their respective classes. And in some cases, some of the best talent that we've seen coming into the NFL, certainly a tight end and running back. There's a lot to love about what the situation can be, but if they don't get the quarterback fixed, it's really not going to matter very much, So that's the next, phase of what has to happen for the Falcons here. So we'll see. I think they put their GM Terry Fontenot on notice as well that he's probably not going to be around. Also, given the fact that the statement that they released that he'll be part of the hiring process, as opposed to he will be the guy making the hire. So don't be surprised if the coach that they bring in, if in fact they probably have somebody in place already, decides to have his own personnel person. Could be Bill Belichick. So we'll see what happens with who the Patriots hire, but obviously the quarterback is still to be determined, and that's a big part of it.
The Falcons have the 8th pick, and I do think at this point, depending on what happens tonight in the national championship game, you could see 4 quarterbacks going in the top 8 with Williams, May, Jaden Daniels, and Penix. But I'm looking right now at a mock draft on our website from December 21st from Chris Trapasso. No, it's Chris Trapasso from
I know Ryan just because I did a college football segment yesterday on HQ with talking about the game tonight, and Ryan has Penix at 11, so he could easily be in play.
Yeah, and I'm looking at one from the 21st, 2 of them from the 21st, and Penix is not in either of them. And that was the point I'd make about Penix, is that I don't think he was considered a first-round pick until last week. And I'd wonder if it's a little silly to overlook an entire career and just go, he was great. He was great. And maybe, this happens all the time. I mean, quarterbacks rise so much. But I do wonder about that with Penix, if he's going to be pushed up by one performance. And we'll see what happens tonight. If he has a bad game tonight, he may, all this buzz.
Down, sure.
Well, it's been the season, so, and I think part of it, and I just know this, and I wasn't aware of this just because I wasn't, I'm not so dialed in yet as I will be, that he had both ACLs repaired.
Mm-hmm.
So the segment I did was with former GM, current Commanders consultant, Rick Spielman, and he said that the medicals will certainly matter for what will happen here. But as was said on the segment as well, teams will overlook medicals if they like the player. So I think it'll come down to if he has a strong game tonight on top of what he did in the semifinals, then he's definitely a first round pick. There's no doubt about it at this point. It's just a matter of, is he a top 10 pick? And that's, I think, what will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Some of his throws that he made in that game were just
absolutely
ridiculous.
He also, at halftime in that game, I don't know if he got sacked in the second half, but they gave the stat at halftime. He's been sacked 11 times all season. So that's another thing. Holy cow, what an offensive line.
The comparison that Rick Spielman made was kind of twofold. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of Tua comparisons because they're lefties. And then, but the thing he said, as a player, he reminds him a lot of CJ Stroud.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Just go back to the Falcons here. I mean, does it concern you at all? They have been first and third in rush attempts the last 2 years, and they've been first and second, or second and first in running back rush attempts. So I guess, how could a coach be better for both the running game and the passing game? I know
by eliminating the number of running backs that are going to run the ball.
Well, Patterson is gone. He's not staying on the team.
Right, but still, how many games this year were Algier, forget about him being close to the amount of work that Bijan had, but had more touches than Bijan had?
Well, I think if you Azer stat it and eliminate the headache game, and you look at what was really the second half of the season, Bijan had more carries than Algier. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Dave. Algier had too many carries, I think, for anybody's liking based on where the investments were made in both of these guys. But I mean, look, we had this conversation I think last week. How many teams are going to have bell cow running backs like we're used to talking about? They're not going to be very many, and I don't think Bijan is necessarily going to get 20 carries consistently week to week as long as Algier is there. Because look, Algier's a good running back; he's a good player. So whoever the coaches will give him some opportunities. The thing I think that will help is probably just featuring Bijan more in all facets of the game, and that's I think something that could be certainly done with the next coach and hopefully the right quarterback in place. But I mean, look, there's a lot to love about the situation for whoever's going to be the play caller there. I think we would all look at it and say, of the opportunities for where Ben Johnson can go, because he's the most prominent offensive coordinator looking for a job, or at least in expected to get a job, this would be the most favored landing spot if he can get the right quarterback with him.
And it's so easy for him to walk in and say, all right, I'm looking at the Falcons games last year or this past season, saying last year's crazy. Tampa Bay 5 games ago, Robinson had 1 more carry than Algier. Carolina 4 games ago, that was the rain game. Algier had twice as many carries as Bijan. So like the very first thing that Ben Johnson could walk into a meeting and say is, we're going to find ways to creatively use Bijan Robinson on top of like all the stuff that you saw him do last year. And based on like a smart offensive coordinator will be able to find 25 different ways to make that happen, because Bijan can do anything. He's really a talented back. I don't want him to get 20 carries a game. I want him to get 20 touches a game. And I want him to block into like 16 minimum every single week. Feed him. Give him a chance to help your offense stay on the field. Give your defense a rest. And he can be a hyper-efficient running back. That's what I want to see. And then Arthur Smith rarely, if ever, gave him a chance to do anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I think he did. And Bijan only averaged 4.1 yards per carry in his last 8 games. And those were, Jamie, you said that's Azer stat, this and that. I already did all that going in. I removed the headache game. I looked at really the last 8 games of the year, though. So forget about even the headache game. The last 8 games of the year started with that Arizona game. And that's when they really gave Bijan more work. And when he became the goal line back, not exclusively, but at least usually. And in those 8 games, he had 111 carries and 30 catches. He was on pace for 236 carries, which is not a ton, but 64 catches. He was on pace for about 1,600 total yards and 10 touchdowns. But here's the problem. I mean, as Dave said it, Bijan had 111 carries in that game. Tyler Algier had 70, and Cordarrelle Patterson had 36. That is just too much. Those two
in the last 8.
In the last 8 games, when Bijan became more of a feature back, he had about 52% of the running back carries, and that's just not enough. All right, we'll get into it.
For the last 5 games, he had 12 or fewer carries.
Yeah. We'll talk about it on FFT in 5 if you want to listen to that. Washington fired Ron Rivera. Jamie, your thoughts on that situation?
Unfortunate. I think he's, he needed to go. Once new ownership, took over, and you saw the way the season unfolded. And for a team that, I think some people thought had a chance to maybe be a playoff contender this year, certainly disappointed. The defense really did not play well. Jack Del Rio, you could say was a big part of that. They got rid of him, but that's kind of Rivera's calling card too. And so, just a team I think they need a reset button. And again, looking at who's going to come in there, they got to fix the quarterback. So they're going to draft a quarterback most likely. I mean, it'd be very shocking if they did not. They've certainly been rumored to maybe trade up to the number 1 spot. But there's still plenty of talent there. When you look at McLaurin and hopefully the next coach brings out the best of Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. It's not a bad receiving core. I think they need to get younger at tight end. And the running back situation, I think, is fine, for what most NFL teams look like. Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, nice 1-2 combo there. But would not be surprised if Gibson's gone. But in any event, a team that certainly needs a fresh start, and the quarterback will certainly determine how that goes.
Okay, we've got Carolina firing GM Scott Fitterer. We got Bill Belichick. We'll hopefully know soon. His future is uncertain with the Patriots at this point. Brian Daboll said the expectation is that the Giants are going to keep defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, and Daniel Jones is hoping to be ready for training camp. And yesterday or this weekend, there was a report on NFL Network that Jones was likely to be the week 1 starter for the Giants. But obviously that could all change. They have the 6th pick in the NFL draft. We'll see what they end up doing there. Puka Nacua set the NFL record for a rookie for catches and yards in a season. 17 games. Come on. Evan Ingram came up 2 catches short of the tight end receptions record. Zach Ertz still has that. 116 in 2018.
He had 1 bad drop, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah. He should get an interception for that. Jalen Hurts. Okay, the Eagles had a bad day. They had a bad day. Jalen Hurts hurt his finger. A.J. Brown left with a knee injury. Safety Sidney Brown reportedly suffered a torn ACL. Bad day at the office for the Philadelphia Eagles. And yet they get the easy matchup in the...
Is it easy?
It's easy. I think I'd rather play...
There's an easy matchup for Philadelphia.
I'd rather play them than the Packers, even at home road, whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure,
yes. In terms of who's left, yes, they probably had the easiest matchup of the NFC side, but still, like the Bucs probably feel the same way.
No one's easy for Philly.
Yeah, and the Bucs, they can run the ball because anyone can run the ball on the Eagles right now. Gabe Davis left with an injury, and actually the Bills got pretty beat up. Rasul Douglas, starting cornerback, knee injury. Linebacker Tyrell Dodson left with an injury. So hopefully they're okay for their blowout again. Oh, Ty Johnson, yeah, concussion, I believe.
Yep.
I shouldn't just assume they're going to blow out the Steelers. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the Bills are playing great. Do you? How do you guys feel about the way the Bills are playing?
The Bills should have won that game by 3 touchdowns last night. I mean, 2 interceptions in the end zone from Josh Allen, and Sean McDermott did not seem pleased when he was asked about that at halftime. They had an opportunity to score again, whether it was 3 points or a touchdown. He was also upset about that, the Ty Johnson play at the half. So, yes, they're not playing perfect football, but they have the opportunity, I think, of any team in the AFC to run the gamut. I mean, you're looking at the way that it sets up for them. The Steelers without TJ Watt, we know their offensive deficiencies, and their defense is just so beat up. So it should be an easy win for them at home. Then you get either the Dolphins or the Chiefs on the road. First road game in the playoffs for Mahomes. Tua in the cold is obviously not very good in his history against Buffalo, not very good. So that's, should be a win for them potentially. Again, we'll see what happens if the Chiefs. Baltimore, we know their history in the playoffs hasn't exactly been great with Lamar Jackson. So if they get by their first round matchup, I mean, the Bills to me are the AFC representative going to the Super Bowl. That's how I have it mapped out.
I think a lot of people will agree with that. I think the Ravens right now are just a lot better than them.
Yes,
but that doesn't mean they will be if and when they face off.
Are there odds on who makes the Super Bowl from the AFC?
Of course.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So how heavy of a favorite are the Ravens compared to everybody else?
I mean, you would just tier it based on the seeding. So I would imagine it's the Ravens and the Bills are the 1 and the 2. And then it's a matter of how much do they still value the Chiefs as the 3.
I'm going to see if I
can
find
so the 49ers are plus 220. The Ravens are plus. This is to win the Super Bowl.
Right. I want to win the AFC championship.
Let's see. To win the AFC. Okay. The Ravens are plus 140, 130.
I see one. Yeah.
Plus 260.
Mm-hmm.
Some places are plus 300. And then it's the Chiefs, Dolphins. Like the Chiefs are close behind, and then everyone else is really far behind.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, that's probably the order that it should be in. But I might say that Kansas City is the second best team in the AFC and the team that Baltimore should have to watch out for. I could see that defense coming together quickly and the offensive line getting stronger, healthier, and coming up with something to stay competitive in all their games.
Oh, I would agree, but having to go on the road based on how they've looked so far this season, even at home, to me, that's a big edge for Buffalo.
Yeah, I get it.
We haven't really talked too much about the Chiefs missing their left tackle, but
it's been huge. It's been not half the reason why they've been bad, but a big reason. Just the pressure that Mahomes has been getting, and he's been struggling to make Superman plays because he can't make normal plays. He can't make a normal play because the offensive line isn't protecting him, and then he's trying to make Superman plays, and his receivers aren't good enough to help him out there like they used to be.
Completely agree with his take in our chat. The Browns plus 1,400 to win the AFC is spicy.
Yeah, that's not a bad one either.
Yeah. Look, defense travels. We know that. And
yes,
they can certainly make enough plays offensively. It's just a matter of it's tough to win 3 on the road.
Yeah. Totally. All right. We're going to take a break here. By the way, are we doing playoff challenge? Anything on the website about playoff challenge?
So I want to check this before I say anything. So if you want to just talk about something else, because I don't want to say the wrong
Sure.
thing.
Oh,
You
Dave.
talk
Oh,
for a
my
second.
gosh. No, I forgot a huge thing. All the Lions injuries. Sam Laporta, Khalif Raymond, and then 2 other guys left but returned. Brian Branch, their safety, and, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But Sam Laporta injury and the Khalif Raymond, these are huge. So unfortunate.
Well, one huger than the other. Laporta being out is definitely going to take away a big time target for Jared Goff and someone who's been a short area weapon, a red zone weapon. And I'm curious if it's just all right, we're going to get what we get out of Brock Wright, and hopefully that he can just pick up the slack while Laporta's gone. But to me, that's a huge loss, figuratively and literally, for the Lions offense moving forward. They need somebody to be that intermediate option opposite Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
And Josh Reynolds, does he step up? Does he become that option?
I think so. I think he's going to be
He might have to be. And that could be someone in those playoff challenge leagues and playoff DFS lineups that could step up and help people.
Yeah, well, it's just a shame. Hopefully it's nothing too bad for Laporta. Dan Campbell said it's not good, but it's not as bad as it looked.
He's probably missing the playoffs, if I had to guess.
But he'll be fine for week 1.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I mean, hopefully there's no ligament damage that he needs surgery, but it was not pretty when you saw what happened to him. So I did see the NFL, NFL.com has discontinued their playoff challenge.
Oh, no.
So much like we did a few years ago, I guess they just found it wasn't worth it. Which sucks because it was always a fun thing. I loved our game. I thought their game was fun too. I do a couple of private ones, so there are people that do, playoff challenges. If you do, they're awesome. We are having it was told to me usually I do playoff challenge rankings. That since the NFL.com discontinued their games, I don't have to do it, but I'll probably still do it because I like ranking the players for the playoffs. So we'll see if that's still on the site, so you can get some playoff rankings there. But in any event, it seems like most of the playoff challenge leagues are going private as opposed to having public ones to do them.
Okay. Well, we're taking a break, a big public break for everyone to see. And we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
All right, let's take a look at the top performers for Week 18 and get some quick thoughts here. Your top 5 quarterbacks, Derek Carr with 35 fantasy points. He threw 14 touchdown passes in his last 5 games. Really finished hot, Derek Carr. Dak Prescott, about 34 fantasy points. A huge game at Washington. Carson Wentz with 28 fantasy points at San Francisco. Josh Allen with a bad game for him against the Dolphins. He had been averaging over 35 points per game in his last 11 games, I believe, against the Dolphins. He only scored 27 points, and that was with 3 turnovers, 2 picks and a fumble. And Jared Goff with 24.8 fantasy points at Minnesota. Man, it's so strange. Jared Goff, the home road stuff lately has been just bananas. It's mostly the touchdowns. But Carr, Prescott, Wentz, Josh Allen, Jared Goff. Dave, any quick thoughts there?
No, I mean, I think as far as fantasy playoffs are concerned, Dak is going to continue to keep roll, and would imagine him to throw a lot pretty much every single playoff game that they have. Allen looks like the Bills are going to go back to him as the catalyst of their offense and not run as much. And Goff is the one that I'd be almost a little too optimistic about for the matchup against LA, because that Rams run defense has been so good and their pass defense has been so bad, and he's at home. He might be the one that you want to start this week. I don't know how much longevity he has. He might play 2 playoff games, but I think he could end up being an outstanding quarterback and a good pivot from Prescott in the first week of the playoffs.
The thing that you want to do with any playoff challenge is you got to map out how many games you think your team, or how many games you think a team will play. Mm-hmm. Because clearly if it's a total point situation, you want to get 4 games. And so the way that I look at it is Buffalo has the most value because they can easily play 4 games.
Sure. Running back. Got James Conner, who scored 17.
What a finish.
Yeah, I know. 30 points yesterday against Seattle. 17.9 or more fantasy points in 5 straight games to finish the season for James Conner. And the Cardinals, according to PFF, they are, I don't know if their actually rankings are updated, so I might be wrong about this. It's only Monday. But currently 26th in run blocking, which would be the best finish for a James Conner team in 4 seasons. Always on a bad run blocking team. One of the 2 worst 3 years in a row.
That's funny. No, that line was playing really well like a month ago, and they kept it up for the rest of the season.
That's also if you buy those rankings being the most relevant thing to judge how they are actually blocking.
Right. I don't, but when I see a team like 31st,
I get it. I mean, look, it's the only thing we can go off of.
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan Taylor was second. Breece Hall was third. He only had 39 touches against the Patriots. Bijan Robinson was fourth. And Joe Mixon, I think, pretty interesting the way he finished the season. Joe Mixon was fifth in week 18. And in the last 6 games of the year, the Jake Browning starts, he was the number 4 running back overall in PPR and number 7 per game. He averaged 4.3 yards per carry, which is like, you know, a normal running back averaging 8 yards per carry. Sorry. But anyway, what a finish for Mixon. Gives you something to think about going into next year, Jamie.
I was just about to ask, you know, if you're the Bengals, do you try and just run it back for one more year? You know, so to your guys' point about, you know, franchise tagging T. Higgins and obviously hoping for a healthy Joe Burrow, if you're able to bring everybody back, do you bring Joe Mixon back with the hope of, okay, he can still give us one more season as our guy, and then we figure out the running back situation after that? Now, I don't know how much that factors into what their salary cap situation. Again, if I'm T. Higgins, I'm gone if I have the opportunity to. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But, you know, Mixon, it feels as if, you know, just based on everything that was, you know, kind of being said, that he's done in Cincinnati. And so if that's the case, where does he go, you know, to probably supplement a backfield at this point? Because I don't know if he goes somewhere to be a featured guy. And that's the next thing of what we have to see with some of these guys that are going to be getting up in age and, you know, leaving teams.
Right. 28 years old, $3 million roster bonus on March 19th. They would save almost $6 million on the cap if they cut him. I think his salary is actually kind of reasonable for a 28-year-old running back. They've got Chase Brown that they could have to supplement him. I can't rule out that he stays in Cincinnati one more year. It doesn't mean that I'm going to love drafting him, but he finished strong, and that's an offense that they could easily just say, you know what, we've got good pieces here. Let's try one more time with everybody.
And they also did allow him to. They could have easily not played him, allowed him to get 2 pretty significant incentives with the 2 touchdowns. You know, so you know that's something I think Zach Taylor said at the beginning of the season. I'll go back to the owners' meetings. You know, when there was thought of Mixon being gone because of the potential suspension, he was like, you know, Joe's our guy, and they stuck with him all season despite the injuries. And they could have easily said, okay, it's time to see what we have behind him a little bit more. And then we saw a little bit of Chase Brown clearly, but you know, they could have easily week 18 said, we don't want to get Mixon the incentives, and Chase Brown, go see if you can earn the job. And they didn't. They stuck with Mixon, and kudos to him for coming through. And maybe he has one more season left of it. You know, I don't think anybody wants to draft him as a, you know, top tier fantasy option if he's still in Cincinnati, but he'll be a great fallback number 2 running back that you can certainly get with a great value pick.
Okay, take a look at the top 5 wide receivers in fantasy week 8. A lot of big names here. Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are 1 and 2. Nico Collins, number 3. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4. Tavian Wicks is 5. I want to ask you about the Texans. All right, we talked to, I don't think Jamie was on at that point, but Heath and Dave both said Tank Dell over Nico Collins. Is there anything that would make you change your mind this week 18 game, maybe another big game in the playoffs? Could anything change your mind about Nico versus Dell?
As far as the games themselves?
No, as far as okay. No, sorry. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
like if we get to late July and Tank Dell isn't in training camp yet and he's slow to recover from the injury that he had, then yeah, of course Nico will go over Tank Dell. But I think people are going to be excited over Tank Dell. I think that they'll know what his upside is, and no one should be surprised by how Nico is performing. He's been playing great all year, but the numbers that he's putting up right now, I think a lot of them would not be here if the Texans receiving core was healthy. And for whatever it's worth, against Indianapolis, they didn't have a lot of other receivers on the field. So it had to be Nico Collins being the main wide receiver for CJ Stroud. And he's still going to be good next year. but I don't see him being a top 10 type of fantasy receiver.
Okay.
I don't know if either one will be a top 10 receiver for me.
Agreed.
But
Right.
they're both top 20 receivers. It feels like they could be a Evans Godwin situation. With Brady and how those guys were operating. Not necessarily the same way, but something similar. Debo and Ayuk. You can get two star receivers when your quarterback is playing the way that CJ Stroud's playing. So, it's a good situation to be in the camp of both. And I think I might rank Nico ahead of Tank Dell still. There's more big play potential.
When I did my rankings last week, I had
With
Dell
Nico?
12th, Dell 12th, and Dell 10th, and Nico 12th with Olave in the middle. So I don't do you guys have Cooper Kupp over them?
No, I would take both Texans guys over Kupp.
I think I would too. I haven't ranked that far yet, but just seems to make sense that way.
I'm curious who's in your top 12 ahead of them. Because I found it very hard once you got past 7 guys in the top 12. I mean, I still have Diggs ahead of them, Puka, and then Dell, Olave, Nico. But I just couldn't really figure out who else to put there.
You didn't consider the 49ers receivers over them.
I did have Debo there. But in PPR, they're just not high catch guys. But yeah, that's totally valid. You could put one or both of them in there. You could put, I guess you could put Devontae Smith in there. It's certainly reasonable.
I didn't say Devontae Smith.
No, I'm just thinking out loud. Yeah, but
I see.
Jalen Waddle, I don't have in there, but I think that's perfectly reasonable too. It's tough. It's some good debates to be had.
Sure. I think the one thing that people will think about is, could there be some regression in Houston in CJ Stroud's second season? We've seen it time and again where a quarterback has a hot start to his career, and then all the other teams in the division and all their other opponents have a full offseason to game plan. And so does CJ Stroud have a good counterpunch? What can he do something else
I would hope
to overcome what he did as a rookie? Because defenses are going to have a way. You don't think the Titans are going to come up with something to try and
No, I don't.
CJ Stroud? You
I
don't
mean,
know? Okay.
well, I mean,
The Jaguars probably will not, but
I think they're going to try. But I think Stroud's awesome, and the
Right.
improv plays that he makes are incredible.
That's
listen,
the thing. I think the thing that you look at from what he was able to accomplish, very minimal interceptions. So he's one of those guys that could make plays without necessarily having to maybe take chances. That are not unnecessary. So that goes two ways. Is he being a little too conservative, or does he get a little bit more, gunslinger mentality in him? The other part of it is he did it with such a makeshift offensive line. I mean, he didn't even know the names of his offensive linemen in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. And that unit certainly got better as the year went on. But hopefully that's what they do to build around him, is to get a little bit better protection. And then do they add somebody else? Because obviously Robert Woods is at the end of his career. Noah Brown, is he the answer as the third guy? Do they have some concerns about Tank Dell staying healthy because he missed beginning part of the season and then clearly the end of the year? So is there another receiver brought in that could really throw a wrench into both of those guys? Plus the run game. Look, I don't think they expected
That's where they're going
to be their bell cow based on how the offseason unfolded. And so did they add another piece there, to address their backfield? So there are a lot of things still at play here, but I think, as Adam said, CJ Stroud's awesome. And you don't necessarily have to worry about what defenses do to necessarily take him down a peg. Dave's 100% right. There's obviously going to be ways to try and rattle him and make him uncomfortable. But, when you're good, you're good. And if you're as good as he looked, he should be able to overcome that. Plus,
and I'm buying into him. You can look at my quarterback rankings. He's going to be in my top 10. He's not going to be in my top 5, but I think he's a great quarterback. And the other telltale sign that worked for me was that he was good when Tank Dell was on the field, or when Tank Dell was off the field, or any other situation that you can come up with. Really, the games where he struggled, it was weather an issue. Did he leave early? That might have been the same game because it was the Jets game. He'd been consistently good all year, despite whatever situations had been in front of him, and he was beating the blitz. And when you can do that, especially at a young age, that's a really good sign.
Well, he was better at home. I think the biggest thing though is, do they keep Bobby Slowick? As long as he's there, then there's a lot to love.
Do you think he gets tired? Did he do good enough?
He's definitely going to be in the interview cycle. I don't know how he wouldn't be based on how everything unfolded, but he feels like same thing happened to Ben Johnson. Too young, not ready for it.
Right.
And so,
so he gets another year there.
Now, some of these offense coordinators that are young, they probably got to go through another year of doing it again. But for Slowick, he certainly is coming from the right tree.
And that would help CJ Stroud develop that counterpunch. Or really, it's not about Stroud developing. It's the Texans offense that has to develop that counterpunch.
Sure. All right. Tight ends, top 5 tight ends in week 18 were Ingram in PPR. Ingram, Kincaid, Sam Laporta, Will Dissly, and Donald Parham, who, I mean, I think Gerald Everett's a free agent. So I wonder if Parham has maybe some sleeper appeal next year. If he's back, he's pretty good when Everett's out. And Everett got hurt in week 18. So something to think about for next year.
Yeah. I mean, see, there's a lot of things that play with the Chargers. But yeah, it's not a bad call.
How old
All right.
is he?
Let's get our top 24s for 2024. We might have only time for top 12. Screw it. We'll do top 24.
Yeah, screw it.
Who's number
I'm
one?
only through my top 20 yet, so that's all I have.
It's hard. It gets tough. Well, here's how many quarterbacks are in your top 24?
None.
Man, I'm so different. I had 2 because I just felt like I got to a point in my top 24 where I started having doubts. I'm going to change one pick. No, I started having doubts about
let me ask you this, though, because I think this is something we're going to spend a lot of time talking about. If you see what happened this year, right? And we just talked about CJ Stroud and a little bit of Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, and Kyler Murray is going to be a value pick, and Tua Tagovailoa and all these guys. And I know you're probably going to say, well, this year might be an outlier based on the points from the high end guys to the low end guys, because that's kind of what we saw, that they all came back down to the group a little bit. And let's just say that the tush push stays. I'm going to guess your top 2 guys are Allen and Hurts. So the tush push stays and Stephon Diggs stays in Buffalo. So there's no real changes for those guys and what they can be. Why would you still draft those guys so early?
Yeah, it's because I don't want to waste a second round pick. So I get to the point in the second round where I'm thinking like Saquon Barkley. I think he's done enough to be a top 24 pick, because I think wherever he goes, he's going to be pretty close to a workhorse. I don't think he'll stay with the Giants, but he's still good. Mm-hmm. But I just see more bust potential. It's almost like, why would you take a running back in the first round of the NFL draft? And the answer is yes. Well, I know I can get good running backs on day 2 and 3. They are some of the safest picks. They rarely are busts in the first round, whereas other positions are huge busts in the first round. You end up setting your franchise back. So that's kind of what the point was in the second round, where I was like, So I'm going to move Puka Nacua. I had Allen Hurts ahead of Puka, but I don't really see a reason for that. I'm going to move Puka and Nacua ahead of them. But Tank Dell coming off an injury, Chris Olave didn't quite have the second year I was hoping for. I feel safer with Allen and Hurts, and I still feel like those guys, just because they scored 26 points per game this year or something like that, I still feel like they have 28 to 30 point potential. We saw it very, very recently. They could have better years and separate themselves from the pack a little bit more. So that's my answer. But
no, they definitely can. But I mean,
January 8th, things are going to change.
couldn't you see a situation though where Allen has a Mahomes type season?
Yeah. If Diggs is gone, I won't. And I still like Diggs, by the way, but I don't think he's washed up personally. But if Diggs is gone, I won't have Josh Allen in the second round. And
unless somebody significant's there.
Yeah. No, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, can you tell me that the other guys that you have ahead of him are safer than Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts? That's the argument. It's like, I don't want a bust in the second round. I don't want to take.
Yeah, but I think if you're worried about bust potential, you can make a bust case. We do it all the time for every player, and so the quarterbacks are clearly the least, or the most bust proof, least bustable. So there's clearly a safety factor with any of these quarterbacks, and this was kind of this was the argument for taking these guys in the first round last year. I mean, remember, I think Chris was not alone, but he was, I think, of the guys that have come on our show saying you should take a quarterback early or potentially in the first round with Mahomes and Hurts and Allen, whatever order, because there's less bust potential and they're good for 28 to 30 points. And we saw there were flaws with all of them. Allen sort of turned his season around a little bit toward the end. Hurts really struggled toward the end. And Mahomes was a bust all season long.
It's funny. If you look at what the rest of the quarterbacks did this year, if Allen and Hurts and Mahomes had been as good as they had been last year in 2022, they would have been worth those picks. It was like it was a good year for quarterbacks. In terms of, there were a lot of good ones that were start worthy, that were not much worse than the elite guys. But that's partially because the elite guys were not nearly as good
Correct.
as they had been.
Well, I mean, it's also, you hear me say this a lot, the pockets of the season. The way Dak finished from week 6 on was an absolute monster. He performed like those guys. I mean, how he was able to, it was, I just wrote this morning. It was from week 6 on, so 12 games. He had 1 game under 20 fantasy points and 7 over 26. Like he was just an absolute monster. Obviously Brock Purdy, what he did. Love the way that
Jordan
he finished.
Love.
Number one quarterback in the last 6 weeks of the fantasy season, 11 through 17, Jordan Love.
Yeah. And then, this is such an outlier, but Joe Flacco and what he accomplished. He finished points per game as the number 1 quarterback this year. If you're going with at least a 5-game minimum. So it's kind of remarkable how some of these guys ended up performing. And in terms of Dak, this is just our ADP. Dak was the 12th quarterback. Purdy was the 21st quarterback. Love was the 22nd quarterback, and CJ Stroud had no ADP. Right. And those were all guys that finished in the top 8 in terms of points per game. So it's to me, it's like we're right back where we were. Why would you draft a guy early?
I hope so. Well, I mean, look, you could. I agree with you. I don't really want to. I feel like I ranked it that way, but wouldn't really want to take a quarterback in the second round. But I'm having a hard time as of now figuring out the best players in the second round.
That's fair.
I don't see a ton of standouts. I don't see a ton of like true, absolute stars at receiver and running back. And I don't have a tight end in my top 24 right now.
Me neither. And so I think that's the pivot that you make, though, is when you run out of players that you feel really good about taking to start your draft, that's where you start to fill in the quarterbacks as the next best available option. And for me, that's not going to be in the top 24, but for you, it is. For Chris Towers, it might be 12th again. I don't know. But that's generally what you do in your drafts is when you're tired of when you don't feel good about anybody that's left at the other skill positions, you pivot to quarterback.
Well, it's also, and I don't want to necessarily just attach a lot of different players to this because I don't know everybody's top 24, but maybe it's instead of pivoting to quarterback, and we're going to find out with the rookies and certainly free agency, but is it pivoting to just, young player that's a little bit outside the top 24 if you're looking at somebody else's rankings, or maybe just pushing some younger guys up? Like,
sure,
where's Marvin Harrison going? And is he going to be a top 24 caliber player or top 36? And okay, instead of taking a chance on, let's say, Cooper Kupp or Devontae Adams or somebody that's a little older that still may have some value, Stephon Diggs, for example, pivot to the younger player that has the most upside because you're trying to win your league. You're not trying just to make the playoffs.
I got to. I really think I messed up. I think I need to put Devontae Adams as my top 12. Did you guys have him as a top 12 receiver?
No.
Top 12 receiver, not overall. No?
No.
All right. Then I won't. He's still pretty damn good, though. Okay. Well, obviously I respect your opinion. Okay. The last thing I would say when you're looking at your top 20.
Because he's going to be the second guy in New York behind Garrett Wilson.
Oh, right.
Oh, man.
I thought you were going to say like behind Wan'Dale Robinson. But no. If you look at the running backs from last year, there's just, you shouldn't take any of them in the first round. The number 1 running back was McCaffrey, followed by Breece Hall, ETN, Rashad White, Raheem Mostert, Joe Mixon, Kyren Williams. There's your top 7. All right, moving on. All right, how do you want to do? Let's do our top 12s. Let's just do our top. I don't think we have time for a top 24. Dave, unveil.
1 to 12 or 12 to 1?
1 to 12.
Let's take the 28-year-old running back at 101, Christian McCaffrey. Just too good. I can't get away from him if I have the first pick as of now. Love that he's in San Francisco. Love that he's now played 2 straight years without significant injury. I would trust him with the first pick. I have Breece Hall second and ahead of all the other receivers because I don't think there's going to be a lot left at running back that I'm going to love when I'm up at the end of round 2. So because I'm picking at the ends, I'll wait to get those receivers then. So McCaffrey, Hall, those are my first 2. Then I go on a receiver run. CeeDee Lamb is my top receiver as of now. Tyreek Hill's after him. Justin Jefferson's after him. Once we know that Kirk Cousins is back in Minnesota and that he's A-okay, probably going to put Jefferson ahead of Tyreek Hill at least. That's my top 5. McCaffrey, Hall, Lamb, Tyreek, JJ. 6th is Amon-Ra St. Brown. 7th is Amon-Ra St. Brown's teammate, Jahmyr Gibbs. I've got Kyron Williams at 8. I can't believe I have him that high. It makes me nervous to have him that high because there's a chance that he's a one-year wonder, but what a wonder he was. And he's still very young, and he's on the right offense to be in. 9 is Bijan. 10 is Jamar Chase. I would not lose faith in him, especially if Joe Burrow comes back and he's fine. That's a combination that I want to bank on. I have A.J. Brown currently at 11th. I don't think I can keep it that way. So let's throw him out. That would mean that my 11th pick is Devon Achane and my 12th pick is Jonathan Taylor. A lot of running backs going in the first round. It's something I'm trying to break the habit of, but I think that those guys are going to be very popular because the position's going to be top heavy and thin.
Will you do me a favor and just repeat the names somewhat slowly?
CMC, Brees, CD, Tyreek, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron, Bijan, Jamar, Achane, Jonathan Taylor.
Okay, now do their full names. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Jamie. Go ahead, Jamie, with your top 12.
Sure. It's McCaffrey is 1. I lost it for a second. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were just going slow.
McCaffrey is 1. Then it's 3 receivers for me. I still have Tyreek at the top. So Tyreek is 2. CeeDee Lamb is 3. Justin Jefferson is 4. Brees Hall is 5. I have Bijan at 6 because I do think that the new coach will feature him and he will be the 3rd best running back this upcoming season, if not finish higher than that. Jamar Chase is 7. A.J. Brown is 8. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 9. Jahmyr Gibbs is 10. Jonathan Taylor is 11. And Kyron Williams is 12.
All right. Okay, good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Do you have a top 12?
Yeah, I don't really want to give it.
Come on.
How many quarterbacks are in there?
None. I just
many
you're making me really second guess my 101, which is Justin Jefferson.
Why?
Well, no, I think I
good.
think you should explain why he's your 101.
Yeah, I mean, I just think they're going to have a better quarterback. You have either Cousins or something better than what they had down the stretch. And look what he did with Nick Mullins this past week. He's just so good, and he's in his prime. Tyreek Hill has not shown any signs of slowing down, so I could totally see that, but he is significantly older. I think you could make the case, certainly, for a number of guys. Lamb, this was a little bit out of nowhere. This was much better than anything we'd seen before. I mean, where is he for me? He's wide receiver. Oh, yeah, he's much, much lower for me than he is for. He's 9th overall, and he's wide receiver 4 for me.
Who do you have ahead of him? Hill, Jefferson, and Chase?
And Chase.
Jefferson, Hill, Chase?
Chase. I'm not penalizing Chase for this season. Like Burrow was.
I don't think you should, and I think that's a mistake if you do.
So I go Chase, McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson. I go Jefferson, McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase 6, Jefferson 1, Chase 6, Taylor 7, Jahmyr Gibbs 8, CeeDee Lamb 9, Amon-Ra St. Brown 10, A.J. Brown 11, Garrett Wilson 12. And then if you're curious, Kyron Williams is 13.
Can I give you the stat on why CeeDee Lamb was first for me?
Yeah.
After their bye, so clearly they went into their bye and said we need to give CD a lot of work. He averaged 27.8 PPR points per game through week 17. Doesn't even include week 18. 12.6 targets per game. Doesn't include week 18. So if they're winning, and this is how they're winning, and they're succeeding because they're targeting Lamb a ton, I can expect him to outperform potentially everybody.
Oh, I think it's a very fun debate of the top 4 receivers, because with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase should be awesome. And they have kind of a redemption tour coming because of how everything unfolded this season. Jefferson, to me, is a little bit of a wild card just because of the quarterback situation, because it might not be Cousins. It might be a rookie. And so
it's true.
And you said it, Adam, he was great with Nick Mullins. And I think he has the ability to be great with anybody. He's just that type of player. So it's one of those things. And Dave kind of alluded to this with, taking Brees Hall second. Is if you have the opportunity to pick your draft spot, do you want to be in that 3 through 5 range?
Yeah.
To if you're going receiver, if you want to avoid, because we've seen the number 1 pick get injured and potentially be a bust the last couple of seasons, to avoid that curse, if there is one, to avoid having the decision of Brees Hall versus the receiver field, so let somebody else make that decision for you. And then you just say, okay, I want to take the best of what's left at wide receiver while still getting the earliest pick in the second round, which is clearly the advantage to that. So if you want to say, okay, I want to pick 5th or 6th, and I'll be perfectly fine with, oh, okay, Tyreek Sewell, I'll take him. Fine. That's perfect. Jefferson's got a bad quarterback. Okay, I think he'll still be great. Perfect. Jamar Chase, he's probably going to be the lowest ranked of that 4. In a down season, he averaged 17 points per game, so just shows you how great he is. So there's still just a lot to love about all 4 of those guys.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to tell you who our nominees are for the fantasy football superlatives, the MVP, the biggest bust, the best waiver wire ad, and the comeback player of the year. And you can go to our Facebook page and vote. And we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
We are talking fantasy superlatives. So who did we nominate for MVP, biggest bust, non-injury related, and best waiver wire ad and comeback player of the year? 4 categories. We need to get a final 4 for each of them. We're going to talk that out on the show right now. Okay, so guys, give me your MVP candidates.
Kyren Williams, Kyren Williams, and Williams, Kyren.
All right, I'm going to make a good case against Kyren Williams as the MVP. But who are some other names? It can't just be who scored the most points. Obviously, draft value has to be taken into account here. But who are some other names, Dave, that we should be putting as a finalist?
Okay, so the Susan Lucci's for this category would include McCaffrey. I think he kind of warrants it just because he had himself an amazing year and really delivered / over-delivered as the first running back off the board. I can't say he was the 101. Raheem Mostert was right there with Kyren Williams, scored more touchdowns than Kyren Williams at one point during the season, I think overall for the season. And then some other names that could make it, Rashad White, Mike Evans, Puka. You could put him in there. Maybe you look to the quarterbacks and you can make a case for Dak in there. But I kind of agree. The guy that knocked Cam Akers off the Rams roster is the MVP.
Well, how about the tight end who scored the most fantasy points among tight ends this year? Sam Laporta. That's an amazing draft pick. And I think I might vote for Christian McCaffrey because he played every game in the fantasy season. Whereas Kyren, this is the only case. He scored 3 more points per game than Kyren Williams, but he didn't miss the 4 games. So I think to me it's between McCaffrey and Kyren. Jamie, you were very obviously intent on it being Kyren Williams. But what do you think about that argument? McCaffrey averaged 3.3 more PPR fantasy points per game than Kyren. He averaged more than Lamb. He averaged more than Tyreek Hill. So best non-quarterback in fantasy, and he didn't miss a game. Kyren missed 4.
No, look, we I think always approach this. I always approach this as draft value, and Kyren was either one of your last picks or one of the best waiver wire picks, and it's hard to penalize McCaffrey for doing everything that we expect him to do and then some. So he was a superstar. He was durable. I guess if you're gonna slightly knock him, his leaving the game early in the championship round, you can certainly make that case, but he still gave you a solid performance in that game. I think he had over 100 total yards before he left.
It was his worst game of the year, 13.1 PPR points.
In week 17, while Williams was maybe his best game of the season with the 30-point game. Mm-hmm. But in any event, yeah, it's hard to knock McCaffrey. I think that the top 3 candidates for me would be McCaffrey, Williams, and I would put Dak Prescott third. I think just knowing what he did throughout the course of the second half of the season, again, taking into draft value, he was the 12th quarterback selected. And to perform the way that he did and to elevate CeeDee Lamb the way that he did, I think that also factors into it too.
Okay, so if we go with the final 4, certainly McCaffrey, certainly Kyren Williams. Dave, who you want Dak on there too?
I think Dak deserves it.
All right, so the last spot, I'd say it's either Puka,
How about Lamb?
I would
Evans,
put Puka.
Lamb. Yeah, Lamb is certainly up there. Lamb
was drafted as a first-round pick, and he again, not to penalize him for the way he performed, but he was expected to be an elite receiver, and he played like one.
I think Laporta really deserves, to be the number 1 tight end in fantasy.
He was number 1 in total points.
Yeah, he was number 3 per game.
PPR points per game.
All right. So who's our last one? If
I would
Dak's
say
three, Puka? Okay. All right. So
Why not Mostert?
Because Mostert didn't play in the fantasy playoffs.
I'm missing week 17, I think. It's
And
tough.
16.
Okay.
He missed week 6. He didn't miss week 16, did he?
Oh, that's the game he left early, right? That was the
Left early in 16, missed
was the Cowboys
17,
game.
missed 18. So
Okay.
he helped you get there, and then he might have been the reason why you didn't make it all the way.
McCaffrey, Kyren, Dak, Puka. Biggest bust, non-injury related.
There's 3 for me, and it's not close. It's Mahomes, Pollard, and Bijan.
I had those 3. I also had Diggs. Just he finished so poorly.
So
Like,
you can say
mattered
Diggs,
most.
you know, and this is a tough one because he still finished in however metric you want to look at it, total points or points per game, top 3 or top 2. But Kelsey.
Yeah. He was good for time. I mean, the thing about Mahomes and Kelsey is they were so bad when it mattered most. And Diggs too. And Pollard too. Pollard scored a combined 18.9 PPR fantasy points in weeks 15 through 17. In your fantasy playoffs, he had fewer than 8 points in every game. I think
He's the biggest bust.
Yeah.
I think he is too.
So Pollard, Bijan, Mahomes, we're good with that 3. Who's our 4th?
I would say Kelsey 4.
Which sounds crazy, but you've got to consider where he was drafted and what the expectations were.
100%.
Was he a bigger bust than Diggs though? Because Kelsey was like the number 2 tight end per game or something.
No, I think Diggs was probably
15 per game.
wound up being a bigger bust than Kelsey, but they were both along the same lines. They both went totally flaccid the end of the season.
Yeah. All right. So that's 2 votes for Diggs. So he'll be our 4th. Best waiver wire ad. Well, it's going to end up being one of the Rams. Yeah. Kyren, Puka. I have Jordan Love, who
He
was
belongs on there.
I would put Stroud
16.
over Love if we're going based on ADP because Stroud had no ADP.
Yeah, but
So-
both were picked up off the waiver wire, and Love was better than Stroud.
Yeah, and he came through. He was, like I said, he was the number 1 quarterback
fine.
in fantasy in the last 6 weeks of the fantasy season.
Yep. And just like Stroud, the guys that he was throwing to changed almost every week.
Yeah, I
Somebody
would say
was
it's
out,
the 2
somebody
Rams
was out,
guys,
and
and then
he
you can pick 2
continued to
quarterbacks.
crush.
So would you put both quarterbacks on? Because I think you could do Tank Dell. You could do Achane.
Those guys had
HM
ADP, though.
was good, but you had to go so long without him.
I think if you also want to put a 3rd quarterback in there, Purdy.
Oh, that's a great call.
Yeah. Love finished 1/10 of a point per game higher than Purdy.
I would
And
say the 2
both were
Rams,
ahead of
Purdy
Stroud
and
by
Love.
almost a PPR point.
All right, we're gonna go with 2 Rams and 2 quarterbacks.
I mean, look, this is again, we're trying to pick who's going to finish 2nd place.
So who's our 2nd quarter? So if we go Love,
It's
who's
Purdy
our
and Love.
last guy? Stroud or Purdy?
Purdy.
Agreed.
Purdy. All right. And then comeback player of the year. Who do we have for this?
Mostert
Mostert is probably
Stafford.
the best one.
or Dak. I would say Dak.
Yeah, Dak bounced back in a massive way.
All right. So Mostert. What did Mostert bounce back from though?
He wasn't good last year.
Is that really a?
We're not. We're
I
doing.
mean, look, he
fantasy,
never
we're
had
not
a year
doing
like
back
this.
injuries.
No. Oh, okay. But I think Brees Hall. Wait. So we said Brees Hall, right?
You just did.
We didn't say Brees Hall yet. He's got to be.
Sure, it
He's
should
the
be.
winner for me.
Brees Hall's a good one. I put Mostert on there. I would put Dak on there.
I put Cortland Sutton's name in there because he did bounce back, but he's not going to win. He's just somebody who stunk last year, and he came back and he had a better year.
I mean, if you want to talk about helping you in the playoffs, Kyler.
Kyler's a great one. Yeah. All right. So I've got 5 names. I got Brees Hall, Joe Flacco, Raheem Mostert, Kyler Murray, and I heard Cortland Sutton. Did I miss anyone?
Yeah, you don't have to put Sutton in there.
For me, it would be Dak, Mostert,
Dak, right. Sorry.
Brees, and Flacco.
Mostert, Brees, and Flacco. Dak,
I mean, hell,
Mostert.
Kyron Williams could win this war too. He wasn't playing.
Yeah. All right. I will see if anybody has anything in the chat. Yeah. No. Mike Evans. Oh, that's a good one. Mike Evans.
Mike Evans is a great one.
Yep.
Although he still averaged a pretty good number last year.
I don't think Trey McBride is really a candidate for this one. I see
So-
people saying Trey McBride.
Yeah, I agree. 15 PPR points per game in 2022 for Evans. And then through week 17, he was at 17.3.
Yeah, it's not really a big comeback.
It's
I-
not. But
I
he
agree with
belongs-
you,
I
but that
think he
from
deserves to
a
be
point
nominated.
perspective, from point
That's better than
perspective,
Sutton.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hall, Flacco, and Mostert for sure. Who's our fourth? Prescott, Kyler.
I go
I
Dak.
think Dak bounced back.
Okay. These
Or
will be
Tua.
up on Facebook. Tua? I don't know.
I mean, the concussions last year, didn't play very much. Played 17 games.
And what exactly is Dak bouncing back from? Sorry.
He was miserable last season.
Okay. It doesn't matter. Brees Hall this should be the Brees Hall Comeback Player of the Year award. Right? I mean, I think Flacco's going to get a lot of votes, but Hall is going to win. Okay. Thank you, guys. I love superlatives. They're very fun. Ezekiel Elliott. That's a good one. Comeback Player of the Year.
When's our first mock?
Wednesday.
Tuesday, right?
No, Wednesday.
No, Tuesday.
Oh, it got moved to Tuesday, right? Okay.
When are we going to have our first fan mock?
Oh, that's a great question.
We have like 12 people listening. I mean,
No, we don't. We have more than you think. I bet we
All
have
right,
more
everybody
listeners.
who's listening, you're in the mock draft.
I bet we have more listeners this week than last week. That's my guess. All right, everybody. Is James Conner a comeback candidate?
yeah.
What did he average?
No, he was great last season.
He was good. And really, he only stepped up and he got hurt this year. He actually averaged more PPR points per game last year than through 17 games this year. So, no. He's actually gone down.
Debo.
Yeah,
Does
Debo's
Debo
not a
get
bad
on
one.
there?
Yep. He had 4 more PPR points per game this year than last year, not including weeks 18.
Jerry Jeudy, week 18 redemption.
Just in time to help us.
I guess I'm going to leave Debo off for Dak, but Brees Hall should win. Vote for Brees Hall. We'll talk to you later, everyone. Sorry, I don't mean to be influential or anything. We'll talk to you on Wednesday on Fantasy Football Today.
So influential. Everybody